Welcome to another episode of the Carlito Monroe Show. I'm your host, Carlito Monroe. And before I get started, all my social media information is at the bottom of the screen. It's always the same. Carlito Monroe Show. YouTube, like, share, subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when I upload new content. This is kind of impromptu show. Not too long ago, I watched the Chris Rock stand up, and it was entertaining, like I would expect it to be. It had a lot of funny points. How he does. This is just my opinion. There's been other specials that he's had in the past, like the ones he used to have on HBO and the different ones like that I personally thought were much more funnier. I'm one of the people that's like a real fan of comedy. I wouldn't say I studied it, but I've seen a lot of different comedians, and I'm a critic to a certain degree. Not every comedian is actually funny to me. I prefer a storytelling kind of comic, especially if they tell a great story that can draw you in. Tonight, it was live. If anybody who's seen it, I think he did a good job overall. And he's Chris Rock, but I think people mainly tuned in because it was advertised that he's going to speak on the Will Smith situation. And that's what people have been waiting on for a year since he was slapped at the Oscars, which I'm sure everyone knows that. And I've expressed my opinion on that before. And me personally, I feel like Will was wrong for doing that. And pretty much everything that everybody thought was pretty much the same thing that Chris thought when he expressed it in his stand-up. He had a lot of different points, and I probably don't remember everything was said. I know he talked about Meghan Markle for a little bit. Her being, her saying that the royal family's racist, which is no surprise, but, he made a few jokes about that. He said some other little stuff. He was hitting on the Will Smith thing just a little bit as it went on throughout the thing. But he didn't really get on it until probably like the last 10, 11, 12 minutes, something like that. But for prior up to that point, I enjoyed the show. Would I take the time to watch it a second time? No, it's not a show like that for me. Dave Chappelle, he's had some of his stand-ups I've watched twice. Sticks and Stones. I think that's the one where Dave Chappelle had. I actually watched that. I've watched that 3 times now. So, something I wouldn't mind viewing a second time lets me know that person did a good job as far as stand-up. And even like movies, I've watched movies that I've seen several times. I thought it was a good movie, so I watched it a few more times. But with Chris, his last, 10, 11, 12 minutes, whatever it was basically a rant. And I'm not taking anything from it. I'm sure it was therapeutic for him. His eyes were watering at one point, or maybe his eyes were just burning. I don't know, but I felt like he was getting a little emotional, letting this out. You know what I mean? Because he's held it in so long, not letting it out to the public. So I think it was a little emotional for him. That's just my opinion, but I don't know. Like I said, his eyes could have been burning, but they looked like they were a little watery when he was going on his rant. And all of it, and it was celebratory for the fans that were there to be able to see it in person. Myself, I'm watching it, and I'm like, I felt a level of gratification for him. The man got physically assaulted. Will Smith wasn't arrested. None of that. Will Smith even went on a party that night and got jiggy with it. I think he even sung like the jiggy song at a separate party that Chris was at, and just the whole thing. This was like a year ago. But to me, it just seemed like Chris just went on this rant. And I got to give some pushback with that because I mean, I know he wanted to say this, but he could have just said this in a video like I'm doing it right now. He could have done it on YouTube. He could have just done it on Instagram. He could have did it whatever. I think he saved it just for the Netflix special so he can get the views and people can tune in and watch him. Right. And I don't think anything's wrong with that. But I think that was the whole objective by not saying anything to have the build up, because right after Slap, he's going on tour and building momentum all the way up to this show. Like I said, the jokes prior to this, Meghan Markle, black people checking behind the ears of the baby to see what color they're, how black they're going to be, all this stuff, I don't want to say it was run of the mill jokes, but the jokes that he was doing throughout the show, they weren't like impressive like jokes he's had in the past. They were, I hate to say this, but they were kind of cookie cutter jokes, just kind of like a basic run of the mill joke that I can come up with or somebody else can come up with. But I mean, he is Chris Rock, so it made it a little funnier. And then, but I said, I won't take time to watch it again. I just didn't think it was good like that, but it was okay. But the rant, you finally get to hear about how he feels. But me personally, when I watch a comedy show, I want to laugh. I want to be entertained. That's why you go to comedy shows. That's why you watch stand-ups, because you want somebody to laugh. Now, almost every comedian at some point has a serious note that they talk about something. And, or whatever the case is, they'll have that little point and then, the crowd is quiet and then the crowd ends up clapping or whatever, right? Well, he closed it out and he just goes on and he called Jada a bitch a few times on there. He saying that what Will did was a bitch move. I mean, he expressed how much larger Will is than him than people that may not knew that. And I knew that. I knew when, Will's like 6'2", 220 and Chris is like 5'9", maybe $140. He's a small guy. So he did have points in his rants. Like, one point that was made, it was like, well, you had all these different podcasts and radio people and everybody's going on about Jada and August and the entanglement shit she was talking about. Everybody's saying something about that, but you didn't go do anything to them. You came and hit me and I ain't said nothing about it. You know what I mean? So, and Chris was right. Chris hadn't said anything about the entanglement. He publicly or whatever. He just said this G.I. Jane joke, and it was like almost nothing. It wasn't even really funny like that. It was funny because it was Chris Rock. Some regular comedian would have said that, and they would have laughed just to be chummy, but it wasn't even funny like that. But yeah, that's my take on it, man. When you're doing stand up, I expect it to be funny. I mean, I know he wanted to get that off his chest, but that last 10 minutes just wasn't funny. It was just saying how he felt. It's like he got emotional behind it. He did a whole lot of yelling. And he said the reason he didn't fight back was because of his parents. Because his parents always told him never to fight in front of white people. And then he throws the mic down like to, drop mic, close it out. And people applaud. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's an excuse. A better excuse would have been, I'm just professional. This man has assaulted me. I mean, if I were to fight him, that would have been the end of the Oscars right there. So, I mean, Chris ideally did the right thing. I wouldn't have been able to do the right thing, but I'm not in that field where I can even actually say what I would have done, actually. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I would have done what he did, or maybe I wouldn't have. Maybe I would have ducked. But in a situation like that, you don't expect to get hit or even somebody swinging at you. But yeah, I think it would have been better if he could have got that off and made jokes out of it, but it really wasn't the jokes he was making. Them last 10, 11 minutes, he was just ranting. just going on this rant and calling her bitches and calling and Will what he did was a bitch and all of that. And hopefully this is the end of it. I'm sure Will is not going to do anything else, as far as assaulting him or anything like that. But to me, what Chris has done at this point, doing all this on this live special, 1 million people, I almost feel like we'll need to, beat him up now because the man then called his wife a bitch several times right at the end there. So, but yeah, hopefully this whole thing is over because I don't like to see people get into it. Not even just famous, just people in general. Hopefully it's done at this point. They don't have to necessarily be friends, but be able to coexist in the same room, if they happen to be. And but that's my take on it, man. I just think he should have kept it, kept it on the comedy side of things, making jokes and making it funny. Throughout the whole special, he had little jokes, told little stories and made little jokes. And then it's at the end, it was just all rant. And, but yeah, I just thought it should have been more funnier, and just overall, I just feel like he did okay. And I just feel like he did okay because he's Chris Rock. If he wasn't Chris Rock and the material that he did, I don't think he would have got booed, but I don't think people would think it was a Harold performance. From what I understand, he got $20 million for this. It was part of his $40 million deal, two specials. So I guess he's getting the other $20 million for this. So I definitely don't think it was worth 20. I don't think anybody's standard worth 20 million. But hey, if they feel like it is, then it is. But yeah, that's my take on it, man. I just think he should have kept it funnier. But I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. I wanted to keep it short and just say my point of view on it because I think people are going to start going on about how they looked at it. So I figure I'd go ahead and record this. But if you like what you hear, I tell stories, I do reaction videos, talk about entertainment news sometimes. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when I upload new content. It's your boy, Carlito Monroe. Peace.